Russell, we were just kind of chatting a little bit before the call here, but I've heard, and I didn't tell you this yet, but I've heard great things about you from a number of people. You've got a great reputation for running a tight ship and being on top of your game. I've heard this from Two Brain, from a lot of different places, and I'm super excited to have you on Gym Mastery. So, welcome to the show, man. How's everything going? How's your day? How's everything going?
Yeah, thanks. I was very excited and honored to be asked to come on the podcast. So thanks very much for
Awesome.
that.
Yeah, man, for sure. So
Yeah,
before we get too far, maybe if you could just give us a quick overview. I know you have an interesting background, how you got to where you are today.
yeah. Okay. So started. I'm from England, right? You can probably tell by the accent. Um, Always wanted to be in a bank. Always wanted to work for a bank. My uncle, when I was very young, was a banker. He worked for an English bank in Africa, funnily enough. And when he would come home on leave, he would often take me to my soccer matches in his Porsche. So from a
Nice.
very young age, I had this dream of working for a bank, working overseas, and having a Porsche from about the age of 8 or 9. So I left school pretty young. I left school at 17 to get a job in the bank locally. I was like a teller. I wasn't even a teller when I first started in the local bank branch. And I grew up in about a town called Cheltenham. It's about 100 miles from London. And then I moved to London about a year and a half later because I realized working in a branch wasn't going to help me achieve my goals. So I
Of
moved to
course.
London, started doing some head office type roles, and ended up in foreign exchange. So like buying and selling foreign currency. And then one day got a call from my boss saying, can you come upstairs? You've got an interview with Barbara Levchuk. And I said, who's Barbara Levchuk? He said, she's head of sales for New York. You're on a short list of 3. So I had no idea. I hadn't even applied for a job in New York. But went upstairs. Barbara came bustling in. She was a very typical New Yorker. She was like 6 foot tall. She bust into the room. She goes, you've got 10 minutes. I'm taking my kids to Planet Hollywood. I was like, oh. So we talked for about half an hour. I went on a golf trip. And while I was on the golf trip, I got a call from my boss saying, you've got the job. So this was probably June of 1997, and they flew me over in September 97. So next week actually will be 24 years. September the 18th, 97 is when I flew over. So I flew over. I was 28. Started a job in New York. It was supposed to be for 3 years. That 3 years just flew by. Felt like 3 months. So we extended it for another 3 years. Then I went on to a local contract. So I spent about 6 or 7 years with the bank I was with. It was HSBC Bank, an English bank. Got headhunted, moved to Merrill Lynch for a couple of years, and then got headhunted and moved to Citibank, where I spent 9 years up until 2015 when I eventually quit. So yeah, why did I quit? I wasn't passionate about it anymore. I'd done it for 29 years at that point. I'd been unhappy for a couple of years. We'd had the financial crisis in like 2007, 2008. There'd been some interest rate and foreign exchange scandals in 2012, 2013. So at that time, I was head of sales for North America for Citibank. So, my role became very supervisory and regulatory, and I was spending way more time with compliance and legal, checking boxes than I was actually doing the job that I was really passionate about, and spending a lot less time with our customers, which I really enjoyed. So one day, I remember it very vividly. I was sat there looking at my email inbox, and the reason I'd stuck around, right, because the pay was so good. So I was looking at my email inbox, and I said to myself, even if the bank gave me all the money they owed me, because we get like stock vests over 4 years, right? So several $100,000 I sort of had in invested stock. I said, even if the bank gave me all that money today, like I wasn't going to be any happier. At that point, I feel like I had the material things I wanted. Like, I wasn't going to buy another car. I didn't need another Rolex watch. So I just said to myself, you know what, I'm done. So I called my boss and said, and we'd been having discussions. So I called my boss, who was based in London, and said, "This is it. I'm done." And I left about a month later. So that was March of 2015.
And I have a couple questions. Number one, did you get a Porsche?
I did.
What was it super fulfilling? What kind of Porsche did you get? Like, how was that? Like when you went and bought it the first day, like how'd that all go?
Yeah. So it was short, not long after I moved over. So I moved over September 97. So it was probably about a year later. I passed my driving test that day, and up in the Bronx, I think it was. Went straight down to Manhattan Motor Cars and bought a brand new Porsche Boxster, which was pretty new at that time. So it was just sort of entry level Porsche, but it was a black Porsche convertible, which made me feel really good driving it around.
That's awesome. So you reached pretty early on in New York. You reached that, like, that image in your mind of like, yes, I am now here. Now, a follow-up question. You're in New York. Were you in New York during the attacks?
Yeah.
And so how was that? Like, I mean, obviously we kind of know how that was, but walk us through some of your experience with it. Cause I think it's important, especially kind of where we are in history right now.
Yeah. I sort of got goosebumps just thinking about it, because we're recording this September 10th, right? So it's the 20th anniversary tomorrow. We had just moved. The bank had moved in the February from downtown. We were very, very close to the World Trade Center. Probably not close enough that we would have been, like in danger, but close enough that like we'd have been right there, right?
Right.
But in the February, the bank had made an acquisition and bought another bank, and we had moved into their dealing room in Midtown. So we were sort of removed from it. But I still lived downtown. I lived south of 14th Street, which became the sort of the barrier, right? People weren't allowed to go south of 14th Street after the attacks while all the cleanup was happening unless you lived there. So every day I had to show my ID to get home. It's sort of surreal, right? We're in a dealing room, so we've got TV screens everywhere. So, I guess the first plane had crashed, and then we saw, live on TV, the second plane hit the buildings. And, I think we all sort of said at the same time that, the first one may have been an accident. The second one, this is a terrorist attack. It was just like a frantic scramble to let families know we were okay, because obviously the phone lines, cell phones, and things. In the dealing room, we had a system called Reuters, almost like a very, very early chat function. So I was able to, using the Reuters, let my colleagues in London know that we were safe, and they got in touch with my family to let my family know we were safe, because I couldn't contact them directly. New York just became a very eerie place for a while. I remember all my friends and I, we got together. There was a bar we used to go to watch soccer regularly on 2nd Avenue. And we all met up there that afternoon, and, the streets were just deserted.
Yeah.
Very strange. And I think between a couple of friends and a couple of clients that we had in the World Trade Center, I knew about 13 people that passed away, sadly.
Wow.
I've never been down to the memorial. For some reason, just don't sort of feel the need to go down there. So I've never been down there to see that. And yeah, 20 years ago tomorrow.
Does it feel like just not even that? I mean, because I remember when it happened. And the memory for me is like, I see it on TV, like I'm just getting out of high school basically. And for you though, does it feel just like yesterday, like it just happened?
No, it does feel like it was some time ago.
Okay.
Maybe not 20 years, but it's a memory.
Yeah, I'm watching there's a documentary series on Netflix right now kind of going over the whole thing, and I'm learning all this stuff that I never knew about, and watching the streets, seeing the streets after, like, people are just in shock, dazed, walking around like zombies, like what the hell. And it's just it was the worst incident that has ever happened, like in terms of an attack like that. It's crazy when you think about it. Now, 20 years later, here we are. All the Afghanistan stuff. I'm not sure if you're following all that, but it is crazy. So,
Yeah.
sort of shifting a little bit, you're coming out of that, your job there, 29 years, right? Your career. How long were you having discussions with your boss, and how long was the idea on your mind to leave before you actually left?
I'd say at least a year, possibly closer to two. I remember I had dinner with him one night. He was over, and I said to him, when I'm looking at my career, right, going forward, my next obvious role would be his job. So he was the global head of sales. So he had like 10 to 12 direct reports, various regions. I was the North America head. So, in that sort of pyramid, right, in theory, if he was to leave, there'd be 10 to 12 people sort of angling for his job. Now, some of us were more experienced than others, so it probably would have come down to two or three of us. But, I said to him, I'm not sure I want your job. So, that being said, not really sure, why I would stick around.
Right. And so the money's really good, and you're thinking, and you get the seed in your mind, right? And then it's just kind of growing until you're then one day looking at your email and you're like, okay, I've had enough of this. Yeah. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yep. Yeah.
And so you go ahead.
I was going to say I'm very much like a bit ADD. Like I'm a zero inbox type person. Mm-hmm. So I would get very antsy if I had to scroll to see all of my inbox. Right, I liked my inbox to be all on one page, and I do remember that it was more than one page, and I was thinking to myself, there are none of these emails I actually really want to respond to, so I don't have the opportunity to get it down to one page.
You're like, I don't want to live like this.
And that was the moment. That was like, okay. I think that's telling me something.
And so had you been going to the gym prior to this moment?
Yeah, so I started CrossFit in November 2012.
So it was a number of years. So you're kind of on that journey on losing weight, getting fit, kind of getting into the whole, what's appealing about fitness.
Yeah, exactly. So I had moved, I'd got, in 2005, I got married, or 2004, got married, 2005, had a baby. We moved out to the suburbs. We sadly separated in January 2012. So I moved to Jersey City because it was very close to the bank, which is within Tribeca in downtown Manhattan. So it's a very, very easy commute to me. And then I could still get back to the suburbs easily to see my daughter. So I was driving down the main street one day, Columbus Drive, and I saw this sign saying CrossFit Jersey City opening soon, something like that. And I thought to myself, like, I think I've heard of CrossFit. Like, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but let's look into it. And at this point, I never went to the gym. I tried going to a gym. I tried having a personal trainer a few times. I played soccer once a week, played golf most weekends. But there was nothing about the Globo gym experience that ever kept me interested in going. So I looked into this thing called CrossFit. Thought that sounds quite interesting. They had a few delays actually getting opened. So they eventually opened in about October 2012. And I signed up for their first fundamentals program, which happened in November, which at that time they did group. It was 6 sessions, I think, 6 or 8 sessions every Tuesday and Thursday night for 3 or 4 weeks. And I sort of graduated that in November, December. And at that point, I was 43. Mm-hmm. I was probably about 240, maybe 245 pounds. I had no idea, even at that age, what a macro meant. I had no idea what carbs, protein, and fat meant. I wasn't, I don't think anyone would have looked at me and said, you're obese. I'm 6'3", 6'4", but I definitely had a dad bod. Mm-hmm. I sort of joke, I had a dad bod before it became a hashtag. But because it had just been creeping up, a few pounds, every few months, it had never really become alarming until about that point, right? Where I sort of said to myself, this is just not sustainable. So found CrossFit. I definitely didn't drink the Kool-Aid like a lot of people do immediately. I had never picked up a barbell in my life, so I avoided.
This is horrible.
Anything with a snatch or a clean, I avoided. Partly because it took me about 6 months to know the difference between a snatch and a clean, and a power and a squat and a hang and whatever. So I avoided most of those workouts. But eventually, like all of us, I realized I could get through them in some fashion, right? Even if it was at a very lightweight. So started to go a lot more consistently. The gym didn't have a nutrition coaching program, but ran a couple of nutrition challenges every now and again. So learned what macros were and started paying a bit more attention to what I was eating. It was a lot less of whatever the intern would go out and find on the street at work and sat at a desk eating that. So paid more attention, and the weight started to come off, right? And a friend of mine was in a similar position. We had a competition to see who could get under 200 pounds the fastest. There was no time frame on it. It was just who can get under 200 pounds, which I won. But at 200 pounds or under 200 pounds, I was a little bit skinny, like a little bit
gaunt.
Yeah. I was going to say gaunt, but not quite gaunt, but definitely skinny. So I put a little bit of weight back on. So I'd say now for the past 5 years or so, I've probably been between 205 and 210. But more importantly, I know my body fat percentage, is around sort of 14, 15%. So, I feel obviously a lot healthier than I did when I was probably 35.
I think that like your experience of having gone through that journey, I think it does give a lot of insight when you then own a gym and you kind of see that same thing and you can kind of construct the experience. So, you're in your career, you get to this point, you decide. Now, how long have you been at the gym? For a number of years, you're probably, people, and then they wanted to sell the gym. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, so I started November 2012. I quit the job in March of 2015, so about 2.5 years roughly. And when I quit, I had an idea in my head that CrossFit could be something that I'd be interested in doing. CrossFit Jersey City was founded by 3 guys, Tim, Mike, and Eddie. And I started working with Eddie to try and open a CrossFit gym in the town where I'd actually lived when I was married, Madison, New Jersey. It's about 40 minutes west of New York. And we just couldn't find a space. We had a bit of a false start. We did find one space, which would have been phenomenal. And the landlord, the guy, was all very on board for us to be in there. And then I think one Saturday, the Wall Street Journal put out a very sort of small article in the corner of the back page, talking about the problems CrossFit was having, particularly boxes in New York City, the problems they were having with the noise complaints, right, from dropping weights. Because most gyms in New York City are in like a residential building, or they're not in a standalone warehouse type building, right? And the landlord's wife read it, ironically, and put the kibosh on it. So that was off the table. And we just couldn't try as hard as we did. We just couldn't find a space. So then one of the other 3 owners, Mike, finding out I was interested in getting into CrossFit, asked if I would like to buy his stake in the gym. So having looked at the financials and deciding if this was going to be my next career, right, what was going to support me going forward, I needed to buy the whole thing. It made money. Obviously, being part of it, I knew I had a good community. So the other 2 guys got on board, and after negotiations and taking over the lease and whatever, we closed that deal on April 1st, 2016. So just over 5 years ago, and I became the sole owner.
It's funny. There's a couple things. April 1st was also my lease date of 2016. So when I moved from my big gym, and when Level Method was first developed, we moved down into the smaller tighter sort of like get all the systems in place, laboratory style. And that was on April 1st. So that's kind of an interesting coincidence.
Okay.
And then noise complaints. I think that's like, it's anybody who's owned a gym. Because in the first gym that I ever worked, this is CrossFit Pasadena, way back. This was probably 2010, 2011. There was a salon next door, and we just got hammered by these people. Would get so pissed. And then the same thing at my dad. So my dad owns a gym too, or he did. And this was in Burbank, and they had an accounting like firm next door, and they did the same thing. I would drop weight and they'd immediately come in. And I think noise complaints, that's a pretty big one. So
yeah.
you open the gym, it's all you now. So 2016 April 1st, you're the guy. Is that kind of how it worked?
I'm the sole owner. We had two coaches, two basically full-time coaches. Travis was the head coach, and Christina. And I think even leading up to then, the other three guys, Tim, Mike, and Eddie, all had other full-time roles. So they were not in the gym that much anyway. To the point where I think if you'd have asked someone, say in the 6 months before I bought the gym, who do you think owns it? They probably would have thought Travis owned it, because he was the one that was there most of the time. He was the head coach and the general manager. So I was very reliant on Travis and Christina. As I say, all they did was group CrossFit classes, so about 40 classes a week that they sort of split roughly down the middle. But as you know, and I'm sure most of the listeners will know, you can't make a living as a group CrossFit coach if that's all you do 20 hours a week, right? So Christina unfortunately left shortly after I bought the gym, not because of me, but because she needed to get a corporate job to support her. Luckily, they had been training up another coach at that time, Janine. So she slipped into Christina's role, and we can talk about Janine later because she's now head coach and GM. And you talked at the start about me running a tight ship. Janine runs the tight ship, not me. It's all Janine. So I was very reliant on Travis and then Janine to really keep the gym going and coaching the classes and just keeping it going. But I recognized there was room to improve it, I think. And I had no idea how to run a gym, right? As we all know, there's a lot more to it than just turning on the lights, coaching some classes, and turning off the lights and doing the same thing the next day. So I went through a couple of other mentoring services, neither of which really did much for me. It was more the delivery of content than mentorship. And then I came across Chris Cooper and Two Brain Business and signed up with them and went through the incubator program back in late 2017. And that really helped me sort of transform and grow the business really into what it is today.
And, the lesson, so the perception of it, when you're looking at all the financials of the gym, you're checking it out, you go through these negotiations, and then now you have the gym and you're operating it. What was the difference? So like, what was unexpected about the role and the responsibilities that you had now that you did it versus what you thought it was prior? Is there anything that sticks out in terms of like, what are the big things where you're like, whoa, I wish I had known that?
Probably all the non-coaching things, right? So all the things that aren't related to coaching a class, all the member emails, all the member complaints, all the sales and marketing that we have to do to get new members in. Strangely enough, people don't just walk in the door and say, "Hey, can I start doing CrossFit?" Some people do, but you need a few more than that. So it was a lot more about running a business and just being a lot more aware of the financials. It's funny, people, look at me and say, "Oh, you were in banking, right? You must be really good with numbers." And I was in foreign exchange. We were buying and selling foreign currency. I can't read a balance sheet or a P&L statement to save my life, right? Or accounting. Accounting was the one thing that we talked to our clients about that was way over my head. The fact that I was in banking didn't really help me that much as a business owner, other than being a leader. I think, and leading a team of people. That helped.
Yeah, I think those fundamentals, when I opened my gym, it was the same thing. I had no idea about business and about fundamentals and what needed to happen and what admin processes and systems that needed to be in place. None of that ever bubbled to the surface because that's not what you see from the outside, right? What you see from the outside is we're going to work out and have a great time and this is going to be fun. And then you do the calculations, right? It's always the quick calculations in your head, like, oh, $200 per member, I get 200 member. It's like this thing that people, but without realizing that there's churn, and there's a whole bunch of little things that you need to do in order to keep people engaged, keep them excited about their growth. And this kind of is one of the big reasons why Level Method came into being, was to solve some of these problems. The business fundamentals still, like when you look at something like TwoBrain, like a mentorship, TwoBrain is unmatched when it comes to being able to show a gym owner who might have been either a previous athlete or they come from something that isn't necessarily business, and giving them those fundamentals. And I look at Level Method as sort of like the thing that layers on top to then make some of the things that aren't quantifiable, like member progress or member journey, making those things more quantifiable, which then leads itself very well. It's sort of like a loop that comes back to the business, makes the business better. But you got to have the business in place. You got to have those fundamentals in place. And it's one of the reasons we always recommend, before someone comes on to Level Method, that they've got to have these fundamentals. They've got to have team meetings. They've got to have like a plan. They've got to kind of know what's going on. So, 2017, the end of 2017, you're going through the incubator, you get these fundamentals down, sort of laying these processes, getting organized. And then in 2018, what we were talking about before the call, we sort of, I had met with Chris. I had a call with him because Josh Price was actually, he found us in 2017. He was one of the original gyms in Virginia that I flew over. It was when I was doing in-person integrations. So I fly over, I'm staying at his house. We're like hanging out, we're talking about it. And then he introduces me to Chris Cooper. I have a call with him. And then that's sort of how we got integrated into TwoBrain. And then we have that in the summit in 2018. I think that's where we met. So tell us a little bit about that journey and, how you found out about Level Method and then how that kind of fit into your plan with the gym.
Yeah. So, I joined TwoBrain as a mentee, say late 2017, early 2018. I had heard Chris start talking about the Level Method in various emails and not sure he was doing podcasts back then, but videos. And I think at the time, I was still getting the fundamentals in place, right? I didn't pay much attention to it because I didn't want to add something else to my plate. But then we had the annual TwoBrain Summit in Chicago in June 2018 that I went to and met you and Scott, I think, and someone else. I think there were three of you there. And I, being a bit of a number, I like order, right? I'm a little bit OCD in some ways. My desk at the bank used to be very empty, and people would make fun of me for it. So I really liked the structure of the Level Method, and I signed up with you while I was there in June. You gave me a GoPro.
Oh yeah,
for signing up. So I took it back to the coaches, and they bought into it immediately. We unveiled it to the members, and I would say the vast majority thought it was great. And as you say, just that quantifiable. We obviously record everything that we do, right, in Wodify or whatever gym management system we use. That's for really, you're just seeing the benchmarks and your weightlifting, right? The things you can see improvement in. So the Level Method, with that broad spectrum of fitness that CrossFit is, and having a measurement across the 15 different tests, I think was a huge selling point to our members, that now they can see very easily that they're making progress, and they can set goals, give themselves goals to work towards. So yeah, so it took on very quickly in our gym.
Yeah, and one of the recent developments within Level Method is this, the three factors that we have. There's the results factor, and one of the keys there is that as a member and as a coach, like someone can be getting results, and I mean, who doesn't get results? If they're coming consistently, they're getting results, but very often they don't, members don't realize, they don't see it, and they're like, oh, I'm not been, but the coach is like, look, I've seen you get so much better. And so when it comes to that factor of results, we've got to be able to make sure that clients can actually see it, like it's quantifiable. Then you have the relationships, and then you have the wow. These factors, the wow factors comes down to systems, and having these certain systems in place to sort of help the gym have these things that happen on a consistent basis over time to, influence that wow. So, when it comes to your systems, sales and the intake process, because you've now been with Two Brain for many years, and now you're a mentor, right? So you now help other gyms sort of get that same thing down, get the systems in place. How have you used Level Method, or the ideas, the concepts to improve some of these systems and maybe specifically that sales intake process?
Yeah, I think it's been a huge factor in the success of how many people we sign up. If we can get someone into the gym for a no sweat intro, our conversion rate is probably over 90%.
Oh, wow.
I'd say. Yeah. And I put a lot of that down to having someone stand in front of the mat, and I explain to them. So we use the Level Method for our fundamentals program. So our fundamentals is 5 one-on-one sessions, 30 minutes. So we get a lot in the 30 minutes. And we'll go through the 15 different Level Method tests. And so someone will finish fundamentals with their certificate, right? They know what level they're at. They can see, we talk about, this is your baseline, right? This is where you're at when you start. This is a very nice visual representation of the progress that you're making. We will do the global retesting. We're not quite on the same timetable as you when you release yours, but 2 or 3 times a year, we'll spend a couple of classes or a couple of days a week for about a month. So we'll do about 8 to 10 classes over the course of a month, where we will just specifically do two or three of the Level Method tests to give everybody that opportunity to level up. Where it's very specific to what the Level Method is. Obviously, we're deadlifting throughout the year, with front squatting, so there are other opportunities to level up in some of the tests. But we want the whole gym. We generate that excitement about the Level Method testing coming up, and an opportunity. And then at the end of that, we'll give out the new certificates in classes to create those bright spots for people and the wow factor a little bit. So when I'm standing with someone in front of the mat that's thinking about joining the gym, and I show them the system we use to assess where they're at, show them that they're making progress, I say it's almost a slam dunk that they'll sign up. Given that, I'm convinced that, like, I don't want to spend a month not using it and get less new people to start, but if I did that, I know that our conversion numbers would be lower.
Yeah, it's like the structure within fitness. This is like it's why one of the reasons why it, like when we were developing it, when I first created the idea of a level system is not new, right? But we have this idea of like, how can I show someone and give them a system or a process to follow in order to get better. It clarifies someone's journey, and then they're like, oh, I'm not going to be doing random things, because this is one of the big criticisms within the CrossFit world is danger. I'm going to get hurt. And this is all like a product of the person driving the car, right? It's the person of like, it's like, okay, the car itself or the tool itself isn't the problem. It's how people are doing it, pushing the people before they're ready. And this is, going back to your initial assessment, when you do these sessions, this is something that I hear a lot. A lot of times people have that preconceived notion that they need to really test their people, right? Especially if someone's coming in and I want to get them on the map and get them exactly. But if you're doing it in 30 minutes, is it more just getting them on the map and keeping it kind of not so much about getting a full exactly your capacity, but just getting them placed on the map and being a little easy about it?
Exactly. Yeah. We're not, if we were deadlifting, for example, we're not going until they fail.
Right.
We'll have a good idea of what they would be able to do, based on the first few lifts. And then with the timeline we've got built in for the class, we know at minute 18 or whatever it is, we should probably be stopping the deadlift test and moving on. So we'll just say to people, we're going to stop there for now. I think you've got a bit more in you, but your form was just breaking down a little bit. So let's leave it there. We'll move on to the next thing. This is something we'll be working on consistently in class. So yeah, so I would say we're not finding people's absolute top level during fundamentals, but we're getting them on the map, as you say. I think they feel good about themselves because there's obviously a lot of yellows and oranges. So it's not like everyone is all white. And even in things, like the upper body push, right, where a lot of people are coming in without that upper body strength, we're getting them on the map, right, with something. So there's not a feeling of failure, I don't think. No. It's not like you're not even on the map yet. You're on the map for all 15.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about that is we redid the map, right? So, and you probably you were with us during that time. Yeah. So we had version 1, and version 1 was a little bit, this is like my brain when I'm like in the midst of my training and like create the level method, and it's like way too hard and the jumps are too big. And then version 2 sort of spread everything out and made sure that that white level, that anybody can get it, even the standards on it, there's a little bit of leeway in there, and like it's like you don't have to do 100% standard at that level, because the goal is just to get them to feel success, get them into the journey. And then there's the benefit of the structure of thinking. So like if I know someone's like yellow, orange, white, yellow, that's going to give me as a coach way different information than blue, purple, brown, purple, blue. You know what I mean? Like if you just look at someone's levels, immediately gives me all sorts of information that I wouldn't have otherwise. So just a little note on that, because I think that's, if someone implements the level method, but then never gets to the point to be able to see those benefits, it becomes more of just like this thing that's on the wall and it's kind of cool and people go up there, they're curious about it. But if it's fully integrated, you get a whole suite of tools and opportunities that aren't normally available to anybody in a group environment.
Yeah. And that's another selling point, right? As we tell people, now we have an idea of what you're capable of. When you come into the group classes, one of our roles as a coach is to make sure we appropriately modify the movements in the workout of the day to each individual in class. If you just walk in off the street and say, hey, my name's Nathan, I want to do CrossFit today, we'd either have to make it so incredibly easy for you that you'd probably walk out thinking CrossFit's not going to do much for me. And I sort of say this as a joke, or we'll kill you, right? And we find that people we kill tend not to come back. But the point being is, without knowing what you can and can't do, you're not going to get the right experience. But the level method gives us an idea of what you can do, and then you can get the best experience in the group class. And again, I think it's another huge selling point.
Yeah, I think that conservatism, when it comes to fitness and getting someone into fitness in general, it's important to get them to have wins, right? So like in my gym, we would have people come in and they're maybe a young guy who used to play sports and kind of has still an ego. They come in and they just want to freaking annihilate. But if you give them like a little bit of an easier workout, they'll be like giving excuses like, oh, I could have done way better. I could have done harder. And that's where I want someone. I want them thinking like that versus like blue-lipped, stumbling out of the gym and they're like sore for a week and they can't believe in the experience there. And that's what levels helps us do, right? It's just kind of like quantifying, okay, you're in this realm and we don't want to be like absolutely crushing you,
Yeah. And I think it works on the other end of the spectrum too. The people that are intimidated by CrossFit and think, I can't do CrossFit yet. I need to get fit before I do CrossFit. When they come in and they get on the map, even if it's white or a yellow, it shows them they can do it.
And I mean, that is really That is really what the level method is for, like in terms of application, is for the white, yellow, orange. Once someone gets up into blue, brown, it's like I'm not too worried about that person anymore. They're kind of they're plugged in, they're going down. But in those initial phases, it's very tenuous. It's like, I might, I might leave. It's just like on that 3 month to 6 month, that first journey,
Yeah.
getting someone plugged in and guiding them, I think is super crucial. And, going to the sales process. So, using level method, but how is the first 3 months or 6 months of someone's journey look like at your gym, like in terms of follow-ups or anything like that? What do you do?
So they'll do their 5 one-on-one sessions. That will usually take people about 2 weeks, right? It will take a few days here and there. We sit down with them at the end of the 5th session and talk about next steps, whether that will be group classes, continue with one-on-one personal training, or maybe do a hybrid of the two. We don't assume when someone signs up that they'll do their 5 fundamentals and then go into group, because on a very rare occasion, we would recommend someone not go to group classes. Like, it might be a little bit anti-CrossFit, but there are people that would get lost in a group class because they're just not at that point yet, no matter how good you are, I think, at coaching. Or you could coach them in a group class. It might just be a little bit unfair on everybody else because your attention's on them. But that's a rare occasion. But some people might want to focus on something very specific, or the level method highlights a glaring weakness versus everything else. So we'll have that discussion about next steps, group PT or a hybrid. They get regular emails and texts from us checking in. After about 6 weeks, one of the emails asks them 3 questions, like what have you enjoyed? What are you most proud of? What do you want to work on next? And then after 3 months, I'll sit down with them and do a goal review session and talk about their first 3 months, how they found it, the progress they're making towards the goals that they initially came in with, that we discovered in the No Sweat intro, and then what goals they'd like to set for the next 3 months. And I've recently noticed you've got the goal review part of level method now, right? Which I hadn't been aware of. So starting to play around with that a little bit and try and incorporate that into the goal reviews.
Yeah, I was going to ask about goals because I think that is one piece that is just a huge leverage point, right? It's this point where you connect with somebody, you figure out what they want. And then we call them success plans. And it's like sort of the software that's built in. And it's like you take everybody and you ask them the 3 big questions. And the 3 big questions are, what do you want? Why do you want it? And then what are the things that need to happen in order to make that happen? And then you get a prioritized list and you can give someone this list, and it sort of simplifies the craziness of the complexity that can be overwhelming. People like, we've all got so much stuff to focus on all the time, family and business and like all these different things. And to get a sheet or a piece of paper that's like reminds them of what they want, why they want it, and then like the number 1 things are so important. So in the goal sessions that you've had in the past and what you do on that 3-month timeline, how have you felt that impacts the success of them long term? So have you looked at that at all? Like if it's over the next year, or does that success or the goal session, does it really hinge and make it so that someone lasts longer, stays with you longer?
I think so. I think it definitely helps with retention. Again, I think it's very difficult to sort of do like regression type analysis in a gym, because again, like I'm not going to stop using my level method in my No Sweat intros and see the impact. And in the same way, I'm not going to stop doing goal reviews and see if retention starts to fall off, right? I think we know, and Chris Cooper's probably got the data on it. Goal reviews help with retention. So, following the 2-brain model, we do regular goal reviews, and I definitely think it helps keep people engaged. It gives us an opportunity, if they're not reaching their goals for some reason, to change the prescription. Whether it's add nutrition coaching or I really want to get a muscle up. Okay, well, how about, we do a PT session once a week or once every 2 weeks or something. And yeah, just that check-in, right, where people just don't feel they're just another member when no one cares about them and no one checks in on them, has to aid with attention.
And with your experience now working with so many gyms, like as a mentor, going through, showing them, what are some of the big problems or the big things very often that bubble up to the surface as like first things to focus on or biggest things to focus on?
I think doing what we at Two Brains sort of describe as the basics, right? When we think about retention, goal reviews, right? You have to be doing the goal reviews. When you're doing your no sweat intros, you have to get that emotional connection to someone's why. Why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to, get strong? And all those sorts of things. I had a no sweat intro this morning, and the guy wants to get strong because he's doing Muay Thai and he wants to fight, right? So I guess he's taking this Muay Thai very seriously, and so he wants to add CrossFit into his training to benefit that. And that's slightly unusual. Most of our members, it's some sort of body composition goal, but finding that out, right? Listening to what our members want or need, rather than us trying to decide what they need, right? And coming up with some fancy new program that we think is great that nobody actually signs up for. Staffing, right? Staffing's a huge issue for people. I think a lot of CrossFit gyms operate with many part-time coaches. They'll have a coach, maybe coach 3 or 4 classes a week, basically probably just to get a free membership and have somewhere to work out. I think there's very much a move towards having fewer full-time coaches, right? People that are far more invested in the business. So you can take a weekend off or take a week off, and there is someone at the gym that's going to treat it like their own, and make decisions that will be good decisions, that you're not getting a phone call every 5 minutes with everything that pops up. So again, just the business fundamentals, right? And I think once you have those in place, you should be set up with a successful business. Anything additional to that is fine tuning.
Yeah, I think the fundamentals, the basics, that's never a sexy thing, right? It's like when someone's going through fundamental movements, it's air squat, it's the basics, it's the virtuosity of these things that are undeniably important. But we can grow complacent over them over a long period of time when we're looking for, that technique or that strategy or that platform is going to get me a whole bunch of leads, when you're now forgetting about the fundamentals. And I think with the staff or you finding coaches, that's a huge leap for a lot of gym owners. So it's like the classic example is the gym owner is doing everything, they're mopping the floor. I was just talking to a gym owner a couple of weeks ago, and while he was talking to me, he was mopping the floor. And I'm like, dude, this is not what you should be doing. It's the whole hourly, calculating your hourly rate and all that sort of stuff. But I think one of the big things is, in order to get a team, you've got to be clear with the vision, right? Like nobody's going to hop on to visionless unless they feel like it's, there's something that they can get out of it, which is not a good formula, right? If you have people that are like, I can exploit this or whatever, versus we have this clear vision of what we're trying to do, where we're going, and then people are like aligned with that vision, and then they see it, and then you train them up, and it is this big leap. And in terms of that, what have you seen? So in that leap period, right, from someone being this gym owner doing everything to now having a team and having people, what is the thing in there that's really important for a gym owner to do in order to get people to get on board?
Well, hire the right people, right? And I think back to your point about having a vision, and a mission. That will help you. It will make hiring probably harder, because finding the right person is going to be a little bit harder, but it should mean you need to hire less, right? Because if you get the right person on board, someone that you can explain the vision to, that buys into the vision, then that person is likely to stick around for longer than someone who, as we say, is just looking for a free gym membership and just wants to coach 3 or 4 classes a week. You're going to get a high churn of coaches, right? Or have a lot more problems on your plate. So I think, a lot of gym owners feel that they can't afford to hire someone, right? Maybe full time. So they need to just be bartering memberships for coaching. What we teach at Two Brain is you hire someone, you take that leap, right? You hire someone and pay them with the intention of you replacing your time in a higher value role, right? You talked about your hourly rate, right? We want to increase your effective hourly rate. So where you get to the point where you're doing a lot less in the gym, or you're only doing what you want to do in the gym, and your role as the gym owner, the CEO type role, is way more focused on stuff working on the gym or on the business, right? But you have to, I think, take that little bit of a leap and trust that you will be able to afford to hire someone, because you're going to use that time to generate more revenue for the gym. A lot of gym owners will wait till they've made the revenue, and they never make it, right? Because they're too busy mopping the floors to be marketing or selling.
Yeah. And so, before we hopped on this call, we were talking a little bit about, simplicity, keeping things simple as a focus, essentialism, maybe necessaryism, what's necessary in your life. Now, in your personal life, is there anything that you do? Like, what do you do? How do you use your free time? Like, what are you doing with your free time, and how do you regenerate? As a gym owner, what are you doing personally?
So I have a 9-month-old daughter, which takes up a lot of my free time. I'm still spending a lot of my time on the sales and marketing in the gym. I'm not coaching. I coach very, very little. As I said, Janine's the head coach and GM. We've got a team of 6 coaches that she runs, that really does everything in the gym. So
the hobby is the business, almost, or like an element within the business.
Yeah, but I enjoy it, right? We're looking at a third space. We've got 2 locations. We're looking at a third. I was approached to buy another one that might end up being a little bit too far away. But yeah, just most of my time where I'm not in the gym is spent thinking about how we can expand the business, and provide opportunities for the coaches, right? When we bring a new coach on board, it's almost always we advertise for say we're looking for a full-time coach. When they come in, we show them the opportunity we can provide them to become a full-time coach, even if we're not giving them full-time hours on day one when they start. So yeah, third, possibly fourth location, and who knows after that.
I mean, I'm in the same boat, man. Like when someone asks me like, what do I do for fun? It's like generally it's something business related. A lot of times I'm learning about interesting things, applying things, tweaking. And this is that in Two Brain, you have the tinker group, right? Yeah. Tinkering. I think that word is so good, because it's like, once you get to a certain point, you can tinker, you can make it better, you can tweak over time. This is really important. And then, fitness, obviously, that's all also tied in, staying fit and healthy. I think that's all really good. But I think that when it comes to business, a lot of gym owners, like they have I can't say a lot, but I know of many that have this mentality of trying to extract themselves totally from the business and have like this running thing, and they never have to do anything, and they're on the beach, relaxing. But it's like, that is a recipe for disaster over time if you're not plugged in a little bit, and if you're not maintaining the standards, making sure people are keeping up with what needs to happen. Because at the end of the day, we are the standards keepers, right? And if we don't just keep track of that, without fail, the standards will drop. And you see this all the time in franchises and all over the place. It's like a universal thing. So in terms of that, kind of rounding out this this discussion we're having, when it comes to maintaining standards, how do you keep yourself, you know, motivated about that? Because again, it comes back to fundamentals and the basics and keeping those standards in place. What do you do personally that helps you stay motivated with that stuff?
I think I've always set the bar very high for myself, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe sometimes too high, because then I project that standard on other people that may sometimes be a little bit unreasonable, right? And so if someone's not doing things to my standards, but they're doing them really well, I might get a bit pissed off when I shouldn't. I've never been able to just sit still and not do anything, right? I mean, I probably could have left the bank. I probably could have lasted another couple of years in the bank, right? Cashed out everything and then gone and sat on a beach and done nothing all day. I can't do it, right? You know, even now, if I have free time, I sort of feel a little bit antsy about what's going on at the gym. You know, I am fortunate that, as I say, Janine is right there with me when it comes to the standards, and she knows she holds high standards to herself and the coaches too. So I feel the gym's in very good hands with her. You know, I read a lot, right? And I'm always trying to think of ways to improve myself and the business. Yeah, just I don't sit still much.
Yeah, you know, going to the unreasonable. There's that quote by Shaw, right? Bernard Shaw, and it's the reasonable man adapts himself to the world, and the unreasonable. I'm reading it actually. The unreasonable. So not to think that I just have this off the top of my head. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. You know, and I think I think it's a really good point. Be unreasonable with your standards, hold people to it. And if there is strife or there are problems that are created by too high a standard, that's actually a lot better than the opposite, right? Yeah. So I think that's a great way to end it. And anything that you have in terms of, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, I don't know how Two Brain works. They might, like with leads and stuff, but if somebody wanted to talk to you about mentorship or just talk to you about business ownership or whatever, how would they do that?
Yeah. So if they're interested in mentorship with Two Brain, they can go to twobrainbusiness.com and set up a free call with one of the sales team that can take them through the mentorship process. If they just want to talk to me about my gym or talk to me about my experience with Level Method, they can email me, Russell, RUSSELL @jcfit.co. And yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anyone about my experience with the Level Method and how I think it's helped my gym be successful. So thank you to you for putting it together. I often refer to you, I say the Level Method was put together by a bunch of nerdy CrossFitters with access to a lot of data.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
So thank you, and you know, the improvements that you continue to make, I think are great and help us all.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on the show, man. And we will be in touch, I'm sure, watching your progress over time. So thanks, man.
Great. Thanks, Nathan.